Really excited about this chat today with Dr. Jenevora Williams, author, teacher, researcher. We're talking about the changing male voice. We're talking about the do's and don'ts of how to communicate singing to children, and we're talking about the tips and tricks of how to get them engaged. You are not going to want to miss this. We're here this morning to talk about children's education and teaching more directly how to teach kids how to sing. You spent a lot of time in that world for the past, how many years?
30 years.
30 years.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so you know a thing or two. But first, before we jump into the book, some practical application, what can you give an insight into your education and what has led you to be able to do what you love in life?
Well, looking back, it wasn't really a conventional route to where I am now. But that's because I think life throws things at you that you're not expecting, and you can't plan your life when you're 15. All you can do is react to the decisions you're offered at the time and follow your heart, which I think is really, really important. So initially I was a scientist, and I went to university to do a science degree. Halfway through that, I thought, actually, I want to be an opera singer. So I quit the science and went and studied music instead. And then I went to the Guildhall and trained as an opera singer and went into, a quite good career, working with all sorts of opera companies all over the world, which was great. And then I got a little bit fed up with touring all the time, because it's living out of a suitcase and it's exhausting, and it's not very easy to have a happy family life when you're doing that. So I shifted slightly towards teaching. Teaching I've always loved. Always loved teaching.
Why do you think that is?
Because you're dealing with people and you're dealing with unexpected situations all the time. You've got to think on your feet. You've got to be creative. You've got to be imaginative. You've got to come up with instant answers and instant solutions for people. And also you've got to have a really clear long-term goal for where you might be heading with somebody. So it really is challenging, really challenging.
Yeah.
So I shifted into teaching, and then there was all sorts of questions came up, which I couldn't answer. I couldn't find the answers to. So I started doing some research and ended up doing a PhD. And yes, reluctantly, really, because I didn't need a PhD, but I needed to find out the answers to all these questions that I really wanted to know. So I was looking there at the health of children's voices, because there wasn't very much information on it. And
that was going to be one of my next questions, because we have a copy of the book here, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I need to say, this is a brilliant book.
Oh, thank you very much.
And I doubt you really need me to say that, because you wrote it and you know what's in there. But clearly, I think it's worth pointing out that there are a lot of singing books for children out there. But my experience with them is that they're very much in the same. They fill the same space, which is there's fun games, exercises, which is brilliant, because kids like fun, and to engage them into singing is good. But yours goes so much deeper than that, and from the science behind babies through to young adults and how the voice changes. The science, in fact, I was blown away to see that in a child's singing book there's explanations of formants and harmonics. Because who does? But it shows the level of your expertise, and that's what I like about it, and also gives people the true insight to what's actually going on behind the voice. But
I have to say, it's in an optional little section in between each chapter. There's a little interlude that if you really don't want to go there, you can skip straight over it, because I think some people don't want to go into acoustics of singing.
And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Right. And in the book, there's only a couple of pages anyway, right? Yeah. So it's very, very quick. But vocal problems, which you all have to be aware of, motivation, mindset, real-time classroom situations, how to deal with those things. So really, it was about, for you, this passion for helping people develop, but then you just started to work towards kids. How did that actually come about? What was it about the children?
I ended up teaching children really by accident, and I was asked to do some teaching work because a colleague of mine was asked to do it and she couldn't. So I ended up teaching the choristers at Westminster Abbey when I was only about 24 and knew absolutely nothing about how to teach singing to children. And so I just made it up as I went along. And trusted my instinct, and to a certain extent you can get away with that. But this is why I needed to find out some answers to all these questions I had.
And you did.
And so I carried on studying and researching and talking to people. There's a lot of people in the world who have done a lot of really interesting research and done a lot of thinking. And the more you talk to them and find out what they're working on, the more you can start to get your ideas straight in your head.
Because that's one of the things we've spoken about before, is there is a lot of research and there's a lot of people talking about singing, and there's also a lot of people reinventing the same things, saying the same things, and which leads to a lot of confusion, misconceptions in singing. And I've experienced it, and so for you, did you come across many misconceptions with children singing, things that are being said which weren't actually beneficial?
Yes.
What were they?
Well, not specifically in children's singing teaching. I think in singing teaching in general, there's a lot of when people. I mean, I know I was guilty of it myself. If you don't really know the answer, you just say what you've been told. You pass on the same information, and you may not really understand what it is, but it kind of worked for you, so you hope it might work for the student. And so my sort of passion was to just get inside and underneath and to the bottom of everything, so that anything you say, you need to understand what it is you're saying. You need to understand the principle behind it. So if you are talking about breathing and managing the breath flow and trying to communicate that to somebody, you have to understand as the teacher why the breath needs to be managed, why there might be problems with too much air or too little air, or the body tensing in places it doesn't need to tense in as it's trying to produce that air and manage the flow. So you need to understand that, and then you need to communicate it to your student in a way that they understand. And that is the really important part. You've got to look at their eyes and see, is it actually going in, or are they just politely nodding because they're used to being polite and doing as they're told? And another thing that's really important is, if you're going to use technical terms, use the right one. Otherwise, use more general terms. So, for example, if you're going to say, breathe with your diaphragm, sing from your diaphragm, well, that's impossible, because the diaphragm is a muscle that breathes in, and when you sing, you're breathing out, so you can't sing from your diaphragm. And then you get people patting their tummies and saying, use your diaphragm, and that is also incorrect, because the diaphragm is up inside the ribs. It's a dome-shaped muscle that's internal. So when you're patting the tummy, actually, you're talking about the abdomen. Well, you can say abdomen if you like, but most 8-year-olds don't necessarily know what that means. Tummy belly.
Works. Yeah.
That's great. Don't use stomach, because when you're using your stomach muscles, you're vomiting. Not very helpful.
Right.
So
that's just carnage. What a vision.
So use the right words, and if you don't know the right technical word, use a general word.
I love it, and you are a woman after my own heart when it comes to that. I've read it in the book. Terms like, and I'm sure they've got a place, and they had a place back in the day, probably. But the terms like cover and open throat is a big one for me.
Open throat, yes.
I just don't know what it means. And I don't think anybody truly knows what it means.
It's so misinterpreted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because open throat, if I'm really opening my throat wide, I'm creating so much tension and really limiting any mobility in my larynx. So it's going to be counterproductive. What you want is just to release. You want to let go of the jaw. You want to let go of all of the muscles around the larynx, the swallowing muscles, which close the throat. You just need to let go of them. You can't force them open. You just need to feel that sense of release, which it's difficult to get because it's a feeling of nothing.
Right. Which is maybe what people are striving for when they say it. But as we know as well, the pharynx, I mean, maybe someone might interpret that as I need my neck to open or something. But we know that the pharynx has to actually be manipulated in order to make vowels and to create the sounds we want. So it's, very...
And an entirely open throat makes a sort of noise. Which is
an interesting style, that one.
Yeah.
But do you think, with that in mind, do you think that actually now we need to make a stand and maybe revise the terminology within singing as a universally?
I think there are some pet words that I really support is one.
I'm with you.
Because support to me implies something holding, something maintaining stability. All right, support is a position. It's not something that is flexible and movable and using the minimum of effort that you need when you are looking after your breath. So support, and if you say to somebody, support more, they're probably just going to tense. They're probably just going to grip the muscles, which is the least helpful thing that you want them to do. So that's a word I would actually cut out completely.
The next book, maybe?
Yeah. And how many 10-year-olds would get it if you say support? How many 40-year-olds would get it, really?
And actually, I guess what we're doing is hoping that over a period of time, they can form into the language of singing and reference it to something that you've agreed. Whereas, as you say, if you just use a word that they know in the first place, you know, things will work out a bit quicker. And
focus is another one. Focused sound. What does it? Do you mean a sound that isn't breathy? In which case, if you say a clear sound that isn't breathy, then that's unambiguous, isn't it? Or do you mean a sound that's resonant? Do you mean a sound that... Sometimes people use the word focus when they actually want some of those higher frequencies in the sound that help the sound project, which is a different thing completely to a non-breathy sound. So again, it's a very ambiguous term.
And confusing.
Yeah.
Well, it's confusing at the best, I think, and actually, I mean, I believe that some of these words can actually be quite damaging at the worst. You know, in the way they're perceived and then acted upon.
Well, misinterpreted. So that's why I like to get really to the bottom of it. What really are you saying? Can you communicate that to the child? Does the child actually understand? Do they want to do it? You know, is it... The bottom line is, if you do it like this, does it feel easier and does it sound better? And if it doesn't tick either of those, then perhaps we're going about it the wrong way. Because the student themselves has to have that feedback. They have to be feeling better and sounding better.
And that is a great link to another question. and you mentioned, do they understand it so that then they can be encouraged to move on? Motivation, and that's in the book as well, another great topic, and I'm passionate about that because I'm really fascinated by what motivates human beings in general. But there's something about that, the insecurity at especially the teenage age group, and insecurities. We know singing is quite a vulnerable activity anyway. So with all that and all these psychological barriers that kids have, and we know that the great benefits of singing, and we know that intrinsic motivation is the thing that we want to encourage in people to do anything, how do we facilitate intrinsic motivation in a child in a classroom to want to continue singing?
To want to sing.
Yeah. What a question, sorry. Go.
I'm whizzing about because I'm thinking about the child on their own who wants to maybe be a pop star, or I'm thinking about the child sitting at the back of the classroom who'd rather be somewhere else, and they're different situations really. So motivating children in a group who have not necessarily chosen to be there in the first place, that is like any teacher's job. You've just got to make it fun. You've got to make it exciting and imaginative, and you've got to make it relevant. So use images and vocabulary that the child understands. Refer to either TV shows that they watch or music that they're listening to, or something that they are in their culture, which they're engaging with. So I'm afraid you've got to go out and find out these things when you're teaching.
Relate.
Yeah. And how to relate to a year 4 class. You've got to know what year 4 kids are doing and what they're into. And then, but without patronising them and talking down to them. And you've got to get it right, because if you get last year's stuff, you look worse than...
Yeah. Justin Bieber's pretty popular at the moment, so we can... if we can relate to Justin Bieber, we're good.
Stay with that one, yeah. I just ask, if you haven't done your homework, ask the kids. Sure. They'll tell you what they're into.
Yeah.
So you've got to make it relevant, you've got to make it fun, and there's got to be a reason for doing it. And I think that sometimes just singing in itself isn't enough of a reason. There has to be some kind of performance that you're working towards. When people come for lessons, and I say, why do you want lessons? Oh, because I want to sing better. Why do you want to sing better? What are you going to do with it? Where are you going to take it?
I like that a lot, because again, I just think over the course of time, maybe we lose the original idea of why we do things in terms of expression and telling a story with songwriting. That's what all started, right?
Yeah.
And then we end up 50 years on with everything being a bit hazy and going, okay, we teach people to sing to do what again? What was that thing we started with? Back in the, why, right?
Why do we sing?
And we get so focused on the voice needs to be right to do what, right? And that's the thing. And that leads on to pop music in general, I think. The differences between the styles. And I don't know what you think about this, but I kind of feel that opera, musical theatre, I'm by no means saying that they are easier to learn or teach. But what I'm saying is, I do feel that the outcome, resulting sound, is definitely a lot clearer, and there's an objective to work to, as opposed to pop music, which seems to be a bit more, we're always pushing the creativity, the being unique.
Yeah.
And so what are we teaching kids in the contemporary market on a one-to-one basis? If we're looking for creativity and being unique and doing what you feel is the most expressive thing you can create, whilst going, but what about being able to sustain on a C? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it falls into different areas, doesn't it? There's the area of technique, and then expression and feelings and communication. And technique is a bit nuts and bolts, and you have to deal with that at a certain level if you're going to then have the tools at your disposal to do the feeling and expression bit. You can't just jump in with the feelings, or you come adrift at some point. The technique is ever so useful to help you on the off day.
Sure.
So we do need both. We need to do those exercises that help us sustain a note with an even sound. We need to do the exercises that enable us to move quickly from note to note. We need to do all the articulation exercises so that our tongue and jaw and all of the vocal tract is moving efficiently and quickly. And we need to make sure that our whole body is habitually lined up well to produce the sound, so that we are not pulling ourselves into funny positions without realising it. That's all technique. And that really, the basic technique applies across all styles.
And I think it's even more, I found teaching children that it's a psychology of that is the tricky part, because we say we want you to be unique and express yourself, but then quite rightly and understandably, they've adopted this thought process of, but it doesn't sound like that. And then get demoralised because it doesn't sound in a particular way. And then you've got to go, well, we need to do some work on your instrument. But I want you to be expressive. But we need a bit, and so it's just, I guess it's one of those tricky areas.
You're always coming and going because it can't be linear. You can't say, we're going to do 3 years of technique and then you're going to be allowed to sing a song.
Right. And have fun.
Yes, you start with a song. You start with something that's actually creating music. And then you say, okay, now this might be a bit easier if we let's work on your breathing a bit. That's good. And this is how you need to warm your voice up when you want it to be working a little bit more easily for you. So you're toing and froing between the two, and you do a bit of repertoire, and then you go back to a bit of technique, and then you go to a bit of repertoire, and then you're constantly moving between.
Balance.
Yeah.
I like it.
And applying it. Technique on its own is a bit boring.
Yep.
Yeah, you need to apply it. And also, it's pointless unless you apply it. You have to incorporate it. So it's called, in speech therapy, it's called generalizing. So you learn your exercises and then you do a series of progressive steps so that those exercises become incorporated in your habitual voice use. And that, I suppose, is the skill of the teacher, isn't it? Going from the basic exercise to the song at the end of it, and making sure that you're learning the habits in so that you can perform the song with those habits in place.
And then it's maintained as default. Right. Yeah, I like it. So with all that in mind, if you could teach a child only 3 things, and that's all you're allowed, what would they be?
Can I make it 2 things?
You can make it 2 things.
And they're quite big. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
I allow you to make it 2 big things.
2 big things. Big thing number 1 is an awareness of their body, because it's difficult to do anything unless you know where you're coming from. So just really getting an awareness of where your body is in space. So how it's balanced, how your head relates to your neck, relates to your shoulders, relates to your hips, knees, feet. How that body feels when it fills up with air and then when air leaves the body. So very basic awareness of the feeling in your body and the feeling of release, when you release the jaw, when you release your throat, when you release the systems so that you can then start to use them. All right, so the first one is just a real awareness of the body.
Yep.
And the second absolutely crucial thing is, if you're going to open your mouth to sing, you've got to mean what you're saying. You've got to mean it, you've got to feel it, you've got to understand what it is you're saying, why you're saying it, who you are, who you're talking to, all of those things. You've got to really feel it. There's got to be a reason for you to open your mouth and sing that song.
I love it, and that really is. It is about giving the child the handing over the responsibility, really, of them learning themselves, and so that we don't always have to be there, right?
Well, you can't.
Right.
When the child is there performing,
yes,
and they're standing up in front of the school or in a local festival, or even standing there singing the song to grandma.
Right.
You can't. The teacher's not doing it for them.
Right.
You can't pull the strings and press the buttons. You have to enable them, and isn't that what education is about? It's about enabling. It's a bit of imparting information, yes, and it's a lot of guidance and nurturing, so a lot of confidence building, a lot of what does that feel like, how do you think you could do that, there's a lot of questions, and it is just a process of allowing the child to do it themselves and helping them.
Excellent. So there's a big question in the child singing arena, which I'm sure gets Googled. I'm sure it's Googled a lot, but it's to do with the changing male voice and the implications around that. And I just wondered, because you've done a lot of research on this, and I wondered what your thoughts were on those implications, and in fact probably how do we limit the damage both psychologically and audibly when it comes to that process?
Yeah, well, damage is one of those words that people use. It's actually very difficult to damage a voice. You've got to work really hard in the wrong way to damage a voice. But what you can do is you can create bad habits that can be lasting. So we don't want that. And you can, of course, create psychological damage. You can ruin someone's confidence. You can spoil their experience. So it's very important to keep encouraging the boy and say, look, what's going on is normal, it's natural, it's great, it's all part of growing. What comes out will be something amazing. And a voice that you've got so much more, such a bigger range, so much more flexibility. In the meantime, we're going to go through this process where your range is very reduced and there won't be so much you can do with your voice, but you can still sing. So you have to find repertoire that the boy can sing comfortably. So you have to know how to find out what his comfortable range is. And for that, you listen to his speaking voice. So you listen to his speaking voice, that will tell you where his larynx is comfortably operating. It'll also tell you that his lowest comfortable singing note is about a third below the pitch of his speaking voice. And then you do a little bit of gentle exploring to find out where his upper limit is. Then when you've established those, you've got to do your homework, find some repertoire that he likes, that he can sing, do it in a key that he can perform it in.
So finding that pitch is key, but it's going to be changing, right? From week to week?
It will be changing. It would, certainly month to month.
Right, okay.
It'll be changing, and you need to keep listening and keep adapting.
Because just to clarify for people that may or may not know, the physiological changes, we're talking the larynx lowering, the chords lengthening and thickening.
The vocal folds lengthen and thicken. That's mainly what happens. The larynx lowers in both male and female voices. But what changes the pitch and the voice quality is the vocal folds growing. And they grow a huge amount. They grow about 65% in a couple of years, which is a big
change.
Big growth, yeah.
Like I say, there's not much else in the body that grows quite that much.
No. So that, and it takes a bit of management. I mean, what boys are like when they're going through a growth spurt.
Yeah.
They keep walking into doorways and falling over. And the same is happening in his voice.
Yes.
You know, it's a bit uncoordinated and funny things come out when he's not expecting it.
Yeah.
And it suddenly flips into falsetto when he gets excited and laughs. You know, it's classic coordination. So that coordination will come with use and practice, and that's fine.
And so doing more is good, because there'll be some people that say you need to stop at that point.
No, you can't stop, because if boys stop singing for 2 years, what chance have you got to get them going again afterwards? They're going to go off and do something else and move away.
And the benefits of being exposed to music and all those kind of things as well, musicality.
And kids do engage with music all the way through their lives. We know that. They may not necessarily engage with formal music making. They probably aren't members of an orchestra or even a choir, but they're listening to music. It's very much part of the background stuff that's going on in their lives. And if they can participate at all, it's so much better, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like sport. Watching it is one thing, but actually doing it means so much more.
Oh,
and it makes watching it more interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Same with music. Do some singing, do some percussion, play an instrument if you can, if you've got access to one. Doing is so much more meaningful. And singing is something that we can all do because we've all got a voice. You don't need to go out and buy one or borrow one. You've got one.
Absolutely.
So it is the most fundamental way to make music. Encouragement
to engage, right. So let's just say you had 25 children in a classroom in front of you. We are going to conform with society and
25.
Stick. Are you 32?
Or 30.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Going to stick an amount of children into a room and bark orders at them. What would you do in order to encourage them to engage in that format, in that group?
Okay. First thing I would say is I'm not a trained classroom teacher. And so please can I have a teacher with me in the room?
You are allowed a teacher in the room with you, yes?
Great.
Yeah, okay,
It's like Desert Island Discs, isn't it?
Is it really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my luxury item, please.
Okay, added
I'd
to.
like a real teacher.
I do like the way that you are just reframing every question I ask, but just for what you want. Okay, so you want there's somebody controlling the room that knows what they're doing, and you are just throwing things in from the back.
They're just to create mayhem.
Yeah. So let's just say that it is a teacher that knows what they're doing with the class. They've spent years training, and they actually want to introduce singing into the classroom. What things would you pass on to them to facilitate that?
I would say get the kids to provide the material. So start off with a bit of body percussion. Clapping, stamping, thumping, whatever. Get some rhythm going. Once you've got some rhythm going, then introduce noises and little snippets of songs they might know. Get them to provide the material. You then use your skill to put it all into place to get it to go from group to group, call and response, a bit of, you're doing clapping, you're doing this, and it's all. When they've got all of that working together, you then find that they have created a piece of music using material that they have generated, which is really exciting and empowering. That's your hook. Then you start introducing new things so that you can then start bringing your own repertoire, your own bits and pieces into the mix. Because education is about enabling people to do what they want to do, and also it's about stretching them, challenging them, taking them slightly outside their comfort zone to repertoire, to styles they might not be familiar with, to new stuff. But you can only do that once you've got them on your side with their territory.
I like it. So encouragement, get them in, stretch them. Like it. Okay. So I think that's really, in terms of the nuts and bolts of children's education, I think they're the questions I wanted to ask you. But I'm really curious to know what you're doing now and what you're going to go on to do with. I'm sure there's a book in the.
Yeah.
There's a book on the horizon.
Lots of projects. Yeah. Lots of projects. So I'm still teaching singing to students. I have all sorts of different students coming into the studio, and I still do that as my everyday activity. I've got another book which I'm just starting now, which is aimed at choral singers, adult choral singers, amateurs really, because I think there's a need for something that gives them a bit of information about how to sing, just simple guidance, a few things that'll help them sing for a bit longer, a bit more easily, and also some health information, because looking after your voice, maintaining a healthy voice is really important, and maintaining a healthy voice over the lifespan. So amateur choral singers will often be older singers. They need to know what happens to their voice during all the changes that happen through the lifespan. Partly that, partly also some stuff about medications and side effects of medications and the sort of treatments that may be quite common in the older generation, that knowing what effects they will have on their voice.
Right, because there's a lot of people out there doing exactly that at the moment, aren't there? Especially with the increase in pop music choirs and.
It's absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of singing going on, and amongst adults.
And you want to help them.
Well, Well, yes. If I can do anything to help, that would be very nice.
And then also the course.
Yeah.
The course that you are heavily involved in.
Yeah, which is just brilliant. Love doing it.
Right.
It's a master's course in vocal pedagogy. Now, there isn't another master's course in vocal pedagogy in this country, so that's very exciting. Its official title is in applied professional practice. So that means that we can make it quite broad. People can do their own projects, they devise their own project that uses the information they're provided with, and they then apply that to their teaching. And through a reflective practice model, they then write up project or research that they're doing with their own students. So what I'm doing is just providing information on how voices work when they're singing.
Excellent.
So it is really basic anatomy and function, quite hard science, a lot of it, but just the nuts and bolts of the facts of what is actually happening. So it's not a teaching method. It's just how things work, and then the students take that information and apply it.
But that's a theme. I'm sensing a theme with you, and it's the give everything that you can, whilst maintaining the principle of now go and do it. Now go away and be free and find out for yourself.
And you can always ask questions. I'm always available to do tutorials. I'm doing Skype tutorials for people all the time. So they're not on their own, but it's so much more empowering when you find out something for yourself and then apply it and see whether it works or not.
Wonderful.
And much more meaningful.
Yeah, well, that's great. And so helping a lot of people in that sense as well. And anything else you're going to squeeze in along the way, or anything else exciting?
Any more projects? I've always got projects.
Not that like creating an entire master's course and writing a book isn't enough.
And writing a book. And yes, I'm possibly make another film based on vocal pedagogy and for singing teachers, really.
Okay.
That's an idea.
I think you're allowed to stop there. You're good. You're good for that.
Can't keep telling you my project.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Okay, so look.
One day I might just end up on an allotment, just pottering about with some vegetables. That would be lovely too.
Really, have you thought about that? Have you really considered that lifestyle?
I do anyway.
Do you really?
Yeah, and I grow vegetables in the garden, and I'm very happy out there with my vegetables and my chickens. Just getting a bit muddy.
Yeah. Mine is on a beach. I've often considered the role of selling keychains in a hut on a beach. Which is similar. I think this responsibility is similar to the allotment.
It's just
just
calm.
chill,
But I don't think I could ever retire from teaching singing.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it's never. While there's somebody knocking at the door saying, "Can you help?" I'll always say, "Oh, come on, in you come." Yeah, let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to devise some sort of plan to escape. So here's the thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything I've heard so far has been amazing, and it's all been to do with children's singing. I just want to ask you a couple of questions more directly that you don't know that I'm going to ask, that you didn't know I was going to ask, and I'm hoping for a bit of a off-the-cuff answer from you. I like to ask these questions because when people are doing great things, I'm interested to know if people think in a similar way. And so I would like you to give me the first words that come to your mind when I say a word to you. And that can be a person, an animal, an experience, a thought, definition, whatever. When I say the word happiness.
Happiness. Well, having just talked about pottering about in the back garden with my vegetables and my chickens, for me, happiness is doing your own thing. So it's just doing your own thing, doing what you want to do. So that probably in singing is performing how music that you want to perform in a way that you want to perform it, and knowing that what you're doing is working.
So again, going back to the theme of autonomy and the all of the benefits that come with that. Okay, that's wonderful. That's a great answer. The next word. The next word. First thing that comes to mind when I say successful. What do you say?
Successful.
Can be a person.
Well, I mean, success. If you've achieved success, that's happiness, isn't it? So that's sort of drawing the circle there.
Drawing a circle.
But there are. I mean, I do like the three elements to happiness, which are not mine, but I do think they really sum it up very nicely, and that is autonomy, which you've talked about, purpose, and mastery. So purpose is having a reason for doing it. So why are you singing that song? Why are you teaching singing? Why do you want to join that choir? But there's got to be a purpose, and then that makes you happy. So I write a book because there isn't one like it, and I know people will want it and find it useful. So there's the purpose.
And having the freedom to go and explore it.
Yeah. And the mastery is being good at stuff, isn't it? So it's actually, that's the hard grind. That's going away and practicing.
Somebody should write a book on those three elements.
What a good idea. Project number 4.
Yeah. Has it been done? Yes.
Autonomy, mastery and purpose, but for singers.
Right, yeah.
And singing teachers.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for that, Jenevora. And I guess you've probably need to go off and write a book or
something like
that right now. So I'm going to let you get on with your day. But thank you so much for your time today. I've learnt loads, and I'm sure some other people will be helped by this as well. Thank you.
Thank you.